So we're here with Felix Petersen from Amen. Thanks, Felix, for giving us the opportunity for this interview. A little warm-up in the beginning. Please complete the sentences. Felix Petersen is the best person for?
Trying out new ideas.
Felix Petersen is the worst person for?
Doing his travel expenses.
Berlin is the best place for?
Summer.
Berlin is the worst place for?
Winter.
Okay. First of all, hats off for your very successful pre-launch campaign. I think no other Berlin or German startup has achieved that until now. What have been the main ingredients for your stealth strategy?
To be honest, there was no strategy. So it's not. People seem to think that there was a master plan. So I think what was credited most with it was the secrecy, basically, right? And just to make it clear, we just started building something, and we wanted to try it out with 4 people, which was us, and we basically made this pact amongst ourselves: if it doesn't work, then we're not going to give it to our friends. And we did have a product first that we tried out, and it just wasn't fun. This time around, with the way Amen works now, we caught ourselves sitting in the subway and just constantly checking it. And then we said, like, okay, well, maybe we're onto something here, and we gave it to 10 friends. And usually what happens when you give it to 10 people is they give you, they look at it and they install it, and then they write you a nice email after a week and give you feedback like nice design, but they don't really use it. But in our case, it was different. It was really crazy. I mean, the people were posting away, and basically, I remember the first night when we invited the first 20 people, I was basically up all night and just kept reloading the feed. So, I don't know, we just thought we did what was right, and then we expanded to 100 people and to 1,000 people. The thing is that with a social product like Amen, the dynamics can change in every step of the way. So the following system, or how you populate the feed, might work with 100 people, but then with 1,000 people the dynamic changes, it becomes too noisy, or you feel like you're not seeing enough of the activity in the system. So actually you have to test a thing like this with 10,000 people. And then we had this commitment to launch at TechCrunch Disrupt, which was a great opportunity, of course, but their rules stated that you cannot have any press coverage before. So how do you test a product with 10,000 people on it without anything leaking, right? So that, I think, became kind of it's like, what are they doing there? So many people are already using it, but I'm not allowed to write about it, and we had a pretty strict embargo. Otherwise, we would have been disqualified from that event, right? So it was more circumstantial, and it ended up working in our favor. And then, I mean, the investment itself was another news. So I mean, this is all just kind of added up. But to be honest, it wasn't planned, and to be honest, I'm not even sure if it was if that was so much of an advantage, right? I mean, our goal was to grow in the way we are growing now, to grow constantly, organically, without hype, and eventually hit the hockey stick, right? Like SoundCloud, like Pinterest, like any other good sort of sustainable model. And what you see happening with this kind of hype is you see a large peak, and then then the question is how many people actually remain, how many people remain active, what is the retention like, are they inviting new people, and is the platform growing organically without any external hype? And that's the case, and that's what we shot for. The other thing was more like a interesting byproduct. It did help us with recruiting, I have to say, but that's maybe the only upside. So it's been a blown out of proportion. There was no master plan, basically.
Okay. A big part of that, let's say, hype success were probably also two big names, Ashton Kutcher and Guy Oseary, whose company also has managed Madonna. How did you get in touch?
So, I mean, first of all, our main investor is Index Ventures, and that in itself, in the scene, is the much bigger name. I mean, they're in Dropbox, they've done Skype, and they were on our list of the 3-5 people that we wanted to talk with. And we built the product, and we gave it to a couple hundred people, and we realized it works. So I took my iPhone, I went to London and I talked to Danny Reimer, who I've talked, who basically turned me down with my first company, but I liked it and I liked him, and I figured, if I ever think I have a winner at our hand, then I will go to Danny first, and I did, and we basically, took only a couple of days to get the deal together, and they're the best in consumer internet. It just happens to be that they co-invest in some things like Flipboard and I think 5-6 other portfolio companies. They co-invest with A-Grade, which is Ashton Kutcher's, Ron Burkle's and Gaia Series investment vehicle. So when Florian and I were on the West Coast in San Francisco, basically Danny just said, why don't you show this to Ashton? This might be something for him. So we did, and they invested. They invested a much smaller chunk than Index, so they're co-investors. It's more like an angel. I don't know what the big deal is, to be honest. And in the US, he's invested in 40 companies or so, and now even in Berlin, he's invested in 3 by now. So I don't know. I guess it's just people from outside the internet community thinking it's a really big deal, which it isn't. And Gaia Series just happens to be, also part of that fund. Ron Burkle, the probably much bigger name, the biggest name of the 3, is not being mentioned much. I mean, he owns like half the USA. So I don't know. I mean, it's normal that successful people pull their money and invest, and why wouldn't they invest in internet? And so, what the hell?
Okay.
So it wasn't a big effort, and also it wasn't like a marketing stunt, I mean, Ashton is really involved, and he's like a full-time investor and entrepreneur, in addition to being an actor, and I mean, he actually knows 1 or 2 things about internet and consumer internet, and actually helps us. So it wasn't just like, oh, can you please, can we give you a couple of shares and then we can say you invested, so we have a big PR story. That wasn't we didn't even announce it. It basically leaked.
Okay. So let's talk about the product. Eamon is kind of a Twitter for statements about the best and worst, about strong opinions. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty easy to describe the USP and communicate the USP to your users. But isn't it hard to market that kind of service if it doesn't go viral, as paid traffic probably has pretty bad conversion rates and is therefore too expensive?
Right. Well, I mean, paid traffic is, I don't know anybody who would do that for a product like Eamon. Paid traffic only makes sense if you have a clear, it makes sense at the point where you have a clear, customer lifetime value, and you can basically pinpoint a number to a customer and say, for everyone who we acquire, he's worth $5, so we can spend for it. I mean, that kind of numbers, that kind of math doesn't make any sense for a consumer internet product that is all about reach in the beginning. Yeah, I mean, you already said it has to be viral.
Let's dive therefore into some statistics. As of Monday of last week, you had about 37,000 profiles on the platform. You started beta invites in August of last year, so that's about 5 months now and makes about 240 users per day. How did you get the most users? And what do you think have been the most limiting factors that hurt user growth?
First of all, I'm commenting on the numbers. Secondly, we're happy. The whole point is, and I said this before, the whole point is, do you grow 10% a month or not? That's the only question. And the 10% have to stay the same. I mean, it could be 20 or 30, of course, right? But if you look at any successful company, I believe our numbers are similar, like retention numbers and growth numbers we're seeing right now, similar to where Twitter was at the same time, where Foursquare was at the same time. They're better than SoundCloud was at the same time. They're better than Pinterest at the same time. It all doesn't matter. Absolute numbers play no role whatsoever in the first phase of the growth stage. What you need to look at is, are you growing organically, and is the growth rate staying the same? So if you have 1,000 users and you grow 10% a month, the next month you have 1,100 users. That sounds like nothing, but that's the power of the power law. At some point, you do you do hit the hockey stick, because if you have 1 million users and you grow 10%, it's already 1.1 million the next month, and so on and so forth. And that's, I mean, like SoundCloud, they had, I think, 14,000 users after a year, and now they're adding 1 million a month, right? So I think the only question with this kind of product, and this is like, there's been a lot of talk last year actually about it, which, you know, some of it was really good, like this lean startup stuff. Don't look at vanity metrics. So if you're a internet, you know, celebrity in the US, you can get to 100,000 downloads in 2 days if you do a new app, no matter how bad it is. But then the question is what happens afterwards, right? And of course you can get a kickstart, and if your product is viral and you start with 100,000 users, that's great, right? Because you start from a high plateau. But if you are from, you know, the countryside in Romania and you don't know anybody, and you start with 100 users, but your product is viral from day one, you will catch the internet celebrity at some point, right? So I think that's so basically the only thing we looked at. I mean, we're not even doing the normal stuff around sharing and virality. That we're only turning on that on now, right? So there wasn't I think for the first 4 or 5 months since launch, there wasn't even a share to Facebook or share to Twitter button, you know, which obviously is the way to grow for us. But what we wanted to make sure is that the people that stick after the hype, so from all the people that tried it out in the beginning because of all the hype, the people that stick around and that are active users, we wanted to see, are they staying around, are they staying active, is engagement high, how much are they posting, because that's the core of it. If you get the viral stuff right and the thing grows like wildfire, but then it turns out that the users are coming in here and they're going out there because it gets boring really fast or there's no value, then you're not going to grow in the long run. So, and that's the kind of stuff you can only change much harder later on. Changing the core of your product is the hardest thing to do. So that's why we didn't do Android, that's why we don't have language versions, because in a state when you do something new like Amen, you have to figure out the formula. And as long as you're not sure and convinced, and the numbers prove that you found that formula, you should be very careful with growth, because you're just inviting a lot of problems when you want to try to change core mechanics. I mean, try to change something like, you know, following, or just imagine we wanted to change the way you post something on Amen, and all the people that posted something would lose their statements, or, you know, the data would be inconsistent or whatever, or we would decide, like, we would have to say after half a year, hey, you know, this didn't really work out, we need to pivot and do something else. Then you're actually doing yourself a favor if you know, you didn't shoot for stellar growth before you didn't even know it was working. So I think now we finished this stage, we know it's working, and the next phase of Amen will be about growing it.
So that's why you restricted yourself to an app-based service and not go, or started first with a Facebook application and afterwards introduce more mobile apps, Android and iPhone. Is that right?
Well, there's no Facebook app.
Is that? Will there be a Facebook app?
Maybe. No, I think it's what I said before. It's like, if you can't figure it out on one platform, there's no reason to do 5. I mean, we're 10 people, we're a small company, we're figuring out something new. So there's no, you know, there's nothing that we can just say, you know, this works. I mean, our leap of faith is the product itself, right? So that has to work, and iterating fast on one platform is hard enough. You know, we're trying to have a new release every week and try to do new stuff and try out new things. If we had 5 platforms, that would slow us down, you know, considerably. You do that once you've found the formula, once you have significant traction, then, you know, you start rolling it out and say, like, hey, you know, we're growing very nicely on the iPhone, we might as well, you know, now do Android. But I mean, look at success stories like Instagram, they're only doing iPhone. If you can make it grow in one platform or in one language, there's no reason to add more.